And so just welcome everybody. We're here with our Wisdom of the Pathwork lecture study. And I'm going to go to screen share here in a second, except that I first need to get my computer, I think, is getting old or something. It seems to, it keeps bringing up, and I can't seem to get the tabs to hold on. So I'm still trying to bring you back so I can share it. Okay, there we go. One of these days I'll understand how to work these machines. They're just always a complete mystery. Okay, so share screen. So you should be able to see um, our chapter 8, emotional growth and its function. So looking good. Everybody seeing what the screen all right? Okay. So there's a little bit of an intro that is done by the people that compiled these lectures into a kind of a book. This is coming from a book called The Pathwork of Self-Transformation, which is a collection of sort of some of the most basic and profound lectures in this vast collection of 258 lectures that were channeled. And they're very practical kinds of information, and so you can tell as we go into this, it's uh, part of our difficulty, even spiritually, is this difficulty that we have with our feelings, right? And so I will begin. If I didn't feel anything, I wouldn't suffer. Most people are trying very hard not to feel in the mistaken belief that then they could avoid being unhappy. Haven't you had such a thought? We think it is only a thought, but this wish has its consequence, the numbing of our feeling capacity. Yet the repression of feelings does not alleviate suffering. On the contrary, it increases the pain. Feelings need room to grow, just as our minds and bodies do, so that we achieve a higher emotional state in which we can dare to love. So this begins the guide's channeling. Greetings, my dearest friends. God bless each one of you. Blessed is this hour. In order to know yourself on a deeper level, it becomes increasingly necessary to allow all emotions to reach surface awareness so as to understand these emotions and to enable them to mature. Most of you have a great resistance to letting this happen. You are, did I go too far? Unaware of the obstructions you put in the way of your own growth. Hence, it is necessary that I discuss the mechanism of your resistance. Let us first be clear about the unity of the human personality. Human beings who function harmoniously have developed the physical, mental, and emotional sides of their nature. These three spheres are supposed to function harmoniously with one another, each helping the other, rather than one faculty subduing another. If one function is underdeveloped, it causes a disharmony in the human structure and also cripples the entire personality. Now let us understand what causes human beings to particularly neglect, repress, and cripple the growth of their emotional nature. This neglect is universal. So, I think it's important that we really understand, because sometimes, the guide is, kind of like revealing sort of where we struggle and where our difficulties are. And it can sound like somehow, it's our fault, or it's a criticalness of, our current state. but he's really just trying to name it. It's just a statement of truth, and oftentimes we are looking at it from a very personal lens, and I think it helps also to see that it's what he's saying is a universal kind of human state. So he's saying this neglect is universal. And I see this in, the work that I do and in my own self. We run and we have difficulty with being with our feelings. And I think everybody does. So most human beings look mainly after the physical self. They do more or less what is necessary to make it grow and remain healthy. A good portion of humanity cultivates the mental side. In order to do so, you learn, you use your brain, your thinking capacity, you absorb, you train your memory and your logical reasoning, and all this furthers mental growth. But why is the emotional nature generally neglected? There are good reasons for that, my friends. To gain more clarity, let us first understand the function of the emotional nature in human beings. It includes, first of all, the capacity to feel. The capacity to experience feeling is synonymous with the capacity to give and receive happiness. To the degree you shy away from any kind of emotional experience, to that extent, you also close the door to the experience of happiness. Moreover, the emotional side of your nature, when functioning, possesses creative ability. To the degree you close yourself off from your emotional experience, to that very degree, the full potential of your creative ability is hindered in manifesting itself. Contrary to what many of you may believe, the unfolding of creative ability is not a mere mental process. In fact, the intellect has much less to do with it than it may appear at first glance, in spite of the fact that technical skill also becomes a necessity in order to give the creative outflow full expression. Creative unfoldment is an intuitive process. Needless to say, intuition can function only to the degree that your emotional life is strong, healthy, and mature. Therefore, your intuitive powers will be hindered if you have neglected emotional growth and discourage yourself from experiencing the world of feeling. Why is there such a predominant emphasis in your world today on physical and mental growth and the conspicuous neglect of emotional growth? Several general explanations could be advanced, but I would like to go immediately to the root of the problem. So I'm going to pause here and just see if there's any comments or questions and feel people feel connected to this. It kind of reminded me as I was reading this, it's only been, I don't know, 10, 15 years maybe that we've had even this concept, and so these lectures were back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so that time we didn't have this idea of emotional intelligence, right? It was like everything that was measured, everything that was thought, as intelligence was the mental. And so we are growing in our understanding of this a lot, and you see, a lot more understanding about our emotional
Mm.
intelligence IQ. So,
I think it's
Frank,
very, very important.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Veronica. Say again.
Oh no, it was me. Sorry.
Oh, it's you, Skylar. Okay.
Yeah. I think this is very, very important. So I've joined this talk. I find that it's just as important as other, intellectual and physical components.
Hey, hey, welcome, Frank.
Sorry I'm late. We got a new computer and I thought the program was going to open just like the old one, but it led me on a wild goose chase of installation. So, uh,
I've been having a little trouble with all of the computer stuff tonight too. So maybe it's Mercury in retrograde or something. I don't know. So yeah, we're just kind of beginning. We're just kind of in the beginning of the lecture. So yeah.
okay.
And I thought Jacob joined in earlier, but then it was like at 6:30, and I haven't seen him back yet. So hoping he'll still join us. So yeah. Anybody else wanna? comment, like, how are you, and you can just drop this in, to your own inner, consideration, like, are you comfortable in this feeling realm, and, or, and in what ways maybe aren't you, what parts of the feeling realm do you like the least or have the, most discomfort about? So a lot of this path is like a path of just self-awareness, right? And so the more that, we can understand and surface and be conscious of. And so that's why, again, sort of this way of introspection, of an self-examination, right? And when we have kind of a strong idealized self-image, which was an earlier lecture that we read about this, sometimes it makes it difficult. I remember, like, for the first 5 years, I was so terrified of, these confrontations, what I felt like, and I didn't know what my lower self was. And I was always kind of scared of finding out, right? But I was in touch with my feelings, and it was a great, healing for me to be in a program where, I wasn't expected to suppress them, and I could, like, actually explore them in a safe container. So that's one of the things that sort of the Pathwork process groups, in person sorts of things do. We're learning more how to do it somewhat on Zoom and stuff, and do it, groups together and do this process together as well, online. But it really is very powerful when you're in a program together with other people that you've come to know and, connect to and trust. So anyway, this work, is about sort of this numbing of feelings to avoid unhappiness, and right, it's that's kind of the strategy to, avoid unhappiness. So in the world of feeling, you experience good and the bad, the happy and the unhappy, pleasure and pain, and contrary to just registering such impressions mentally, emotional experience really touches you since your struggle is primarily for happiness, and since immature emotions lead to unhappiness, your secondary aim becomes the avoidance of unhappiness. Unhappy circumstances exist in every child's life. Pain and disappointment are common. This creates the early, mostly unconscious conclusion: if I do not feel, then I will not be unhappy. In other words, instead of taking the courageous and appropriate step of living through the negative, immature emotions in order to afford them the opportunity to grow and thus become mature and constructive, the childish emotions are suppressed and put out of awareness and buried, so they remain inadequate and destructive, even though the person is unaware of their existence. So there's a little more to this, that he's describing here, because what happens is, in childhood, it's normal to have immature emotions, and the guide says in other lectures, if we truly had parents who had healthy emotions and had healthy love, then this problem wouldn't exist to the degree that it does, because they would know how to create a container for the child to begin to feel their feelings, and instead what most adults do is also make the child wrong for the feelings, and then, we're kind of in double indemnity, and, so there's this real, way in which I think it was appropriate survival as children, like, to learn how to somehow, control all of this. And sometimes we did it better than others. And some children, like, had more capacity to, suppress, and other children, couldn't. And so they were acting out. And each child ended up experiencing, like, this relationship with authority, around all of this, that created, a situation where it wasn't easy for our feelings to, be supported in growing up. And so thus many of us kind of, like, we live, and we've learned to function in the adult world to some degree, and how to contain ourselves maybe in most instances. But those feelings still remain in us unintegrated, and and not matured. And so the good news is, like, as we've grown up to some degree, we now have a capacity and a larger worldview and understanding of the world in which we can go back and work with those immature feelings ourselves now. uh, but anyway, uh, like in this original situation, right, we really just had to you know hold, try to suppress them or run from them as best we could. And some people even sort of dissociate, rather than feel what they're feeling, they sort of leave their body, distract themselves, like there's all kinds of ways that we hold in, we hold up, we hold back, we hold on, we hold out, we hold together, and all of this is kind of an inner um, straitjacket protective device, holding process to keep our feelings somehow, in check so they don't get us into trouble. And so we don't have to feel them maybe and feel the unhappiness or the, dissatisfaction or the, disappointment or the guilt or, whatever is there. So he says, although it may be true that you can anesthetize your capacity for emotional experience and therefore cannot feel immediate pain, it is also true that you dull your capacity for happiness and pleasure while not really avoiding the dreaded unhappiness in the long run. The unhappiness you seem to avoid will come to you in a different and much more painful but indirect way. The bitter hurt of isolation, of loneliness, of the gnawing feeling of having passed through life without experiencing its heights and depths, without developing yourself to the most and best you can be, is the result of such a wrong solution. Using such evasive tactics, you do not experience life at its fullest. By withdrawing from pain, you withdraw from happiness, and most of all, you withdraw from experience. At one time or another, and you may never remember the conscious declaration of intention, you withdrew from living, loving, and experiencing, from everything that makes life rich and rewarding. The result is that your intuitive powers are dulled together with your creative faculties. You only function to a fraction of your potential. The damage you have inflicted with this pseudo solution and go on inflicting upon yourself as long as you adhere to it is one that eludes your comprehension and evaluation at the present time. So, and this is really true, we really don't see. I mean, this is the sea we live in, so once again, I want you to not hear this in a, critical or judgmental way. It's true, that there's more damage than we fully understand and that we don't grasp it. But it's because of, we live in this culture, this ocean, this, it's like the water that the fish lives in, so we don't see it. And so a part of it is, like a lot in this work is just bringing out a deeper understanding and clarity that is part of what's in the unconscious, and we know what's in the consciousness because it's conscious, but the unconscious, is this other realm that, the pathwork has many tools to help us access and bring into consciousness. And, sometimes, what we discover about ourselves is not, maybe everything that we had, wanted, but as we learn to kind of just accept ourselves as we are and know that we are also good, we're this potential for love and light and growth and good stuff, then, we can, feel like we can face our own imperfections in a healthy way that can help transform them. And when we don't, then we get them stuck as well. It's another way that sort of our own inner criticism and self punishment and judgment, like blocks the process of this emotional growth and development. So isolation. Since this was your defense against unhappiness to begin with, and by that I guess he's referring to the, you know, pseudo solution here, and so we were trying to, again, it was an innocent attempt to protect ourselves from unhappiness. It's understandable that then unconsciously we fight tooth and nail against giving up what seems to be a vital protection. You do not realize that not only do you miss out on life's richness, life's rewards, your own full potential, but you do not really avoid unhappiness. This painful isolation was not willingly chosen by you, and therefore it is not accepted as a price to be paid. Rather, it came as a necessary byproduct of your pseudo solution. And with this defense mechanism at work, the child in you hopes and fights for receiving what you cannot possibly receive. In other words, somewhere deep inside you, you hope and believe that it is possible to belong and to be loved while you dull your world of feeling into a state of numbness and thereby prohibit yourself from truly loving others. Yes, you may need others, and this need may appear as love to you, but now you know that it is not the same. Inside, you hope and believe it possible to unite with others, to communicate in a rewarding and satisfying way with the world around you, while you put up a wall of false protection against the impact of emotional experience. If and when you cannot help but feel, you are busy hiding such feelings from yourself and others. How can you receive what you yearn for love, for belonging, communication, if you neither feel nor express the occasional glimpses of feeling that the still healthy part in you strives for? You cannot have it both ways, though the child in you never wants to accept that. So let's pause here a little bit. Any comments or questions here? Does it make sense what he's saying about, like how our sort of our protection against feelings also protects us against intimacy and connection with others in the way that we long for?
I think
And a
it's,
part of it, go ahead.
yeah, I think it's also possible that we can be selective about that. We, in my instance, I was unwilling to share certain feelings with my parents because along the way, it felt like when I did share some feelings with my parents, I didn't get quite the response that I was hoping for. So after a period of time, in my youth, I decided I wasn't going to share anything with them anymore. So I was a bit selective about who I shared my feelings with. And I think we can be that way even in adulthood, you know?
Yeah. But that's what the guide is saying. Like, we don't need the defense to do that, right? It's like that's where, as we mature our feelings, our intuition comes in, and sort of, like if we haven't worked with that, then maybe we're unconsciously in the recreation, so we're selecting a partner similar to our parent or whatever, and like retriggering that. But as we know ourselves, as we begin to really tune into this level of the feeling and the maturity of the feeling, then yeah, we can tell who is appropriate to share with, who can receive our intimacy, and who is stuck in their own mask to the degree that it's like it's not, you couldn't really get a real connection with that person, even if you offered one. But it's still like we can still be, authentic. We can still be real. And, you know, we may not reveal everything and everything else, like, we can still be in our heart, and seek, you know, sort of uh, some kind of, accord or, appreciation and relationship, even if it's not revealing everything. So, and again, it's not like sort of that you're protecting, you know, hiding any feelings. It's just that, that in that situation, that it wouldn't be received, it couldn't be heard, like that, some way. So you choose not to, and then you're not kind of all bummed out because you have your presence of your adult there that can, receive those feelings. You can feel, you know, uh, connected to yourself, right? And that's the main thing. And then from there, also that discernment of who is appropriate.
Yeah,
But
as an adult, but when you're, an adolescent, you are, and you've chosen to
yeah, your feelings are
hide your
still in.
feelings from your parents, okay? You may find other groups of people where you're like exploding with feelings and it's almost into an inappropriate way, you know?
Yeah, but that's how they grow. If you never did that, they would never grow. If you kept repressing them, this is why we have to. And, as you're a kid, you're a kid, so you're going to do inappropriate, stupid things. That's, kind of part of growing up. And yes, had you had, a better, connection as a child, maybe it would have been less inappropriate or something. But somehow, like that you managed to survive it, right? So I would say,
Yeah.
that you're, and you've, learned. And then, what are we, like even now, what are the feelings like? I know, like in our whole culture, like grief is this feeling that we avoid like crazy. And yet, and no, it's not even acknowledged. Like in many cultures, you're allowed to grieve for quite some time if you lose someone close to you, you know, or, if you're in a situation where there's some kind of loss. And in our culture, there's just, it's like you might get a couple of days bereavement leave or something like that. You're expected to continue to function. It's not really expected to be an issue. You're supposed to suppress it, hold on to it. So again, these are cultural things that I think are actually more healthy in tribal cultures, where they really support the grief process, and the whole tribe grieves with the person, right, in some way, or the whole community in some form, right, and grief is honored and respected and not run away from. So we end up with these big wells of unprocessed grief that we're sitting on top of and wondering why our hearts feel heavy. And so if we don't go into, through, and out the other side of the present experience, the feelings that are there, and it's not even about sharing your feelings with others, it's about having them for yourself and being aware of the feelings that you're having.
Mm.
So, you know, that's really what this lecture is kind of about, is like learning how to, you know, at least understand that our feelings are not our enemies. And if we want to work with them, they're different than other ways that you have to work with, like meditation, or learning and understanding in the mental realm. Feelings, are kind of a whole different ball of wax here, and we just have never figured it out, I don't think, in our culture particularly. And we just want to kind of deny them and live up in the mental and in the mask level of things. So uh, I think it makes us then feel disconnected from life. So let's see where I was. Um, so since you protect yourself in this foolish manner, you isolate yourself. So all of our defenses are ways of separating and isolating, which means exposing yourself much more to that which you strive to avoid, because in some ways that's more unhappiness, or that's more numbness in some way, that we're like feeling the pain of. So hence you miss out doubly. You do not avoid that which you fear, not really, and not in the long run. And you miss out on all you could have had if you would not run away from living. For living and feeling are one. The love and fulfillment you must increasingly crave for makes you blame others, circumstances, fates, or bad luck instead of seeing how we are responsible for it. We resist these insights because we sense that the moment we see it fully, we'll have to change. And we can no longer cling to the comfortable but unrealizable hope. And this is kind of in the unconscious, right? Again, it's like we don't, I see this inside of me, right? These places where I'm, clinging, right? But it's not all of us. And it's not, what he's describing here is these unconscious parts. And it helps us to kind of recognize what's going on in the psyche because we're a bag of beings and we have different forces often opposing each other inside of our own being. And so one aspect, is this, unrealizable hope that I can have what I want, have my cake and eat it too, without meeting the necessary conditions, or I can get confused and I think I'm meeting all the necessary conditions. It's not showing up. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. There's nothing wrong, but it's like somehow it's not here. So that's significant. And so again, we have to keep, letting life kind of drive us deeper into the questions and deeper into the feelings. And a lot of times, I'll wonder like, why is this happening to me? Some event in life, and the best answer I've ever found to that is to simply say, life wants me to feel something. What am I feeling because this is happening to me? Life needs us to feel these things. And that's its most, primary reason for giving us the experience is for us to, and so again, if we're numbing, if we're avoiding, if we're trying to control it, if we're trying to, you know, manage it in some way, manipulate it in some way, manipulate the circumstances or ourselves, right? It's like we're not fully finding the path forward that always leads into, through, and out the other side. And sometimes it's this descent into the hurt, into the grief, into the loss, into the anger, which is part of grief, right? All of these feelings, into fear, which is a whole other deal, but is often, I mean, how do we, live as human beings on this planet, with this great unknown of, the future always in front of us and in the knowledge of, death and suffering, we have to have, fear. It's part of the survival mechanism as well as just our own psyche, looks around and says, why am I still okay? And everybody else is going through so much. Right? So we have all of these complex aspects, and if we can not be ashamed of them, not judge them, but like welcome them and begin to relate to them and explore them. So the next section is labeled the need to exercise the emotions. So another reason for resorting to this unsuccessful pseudo solution is the following. As in everything else, feeling and emotional expression can be mature and constructive or immature and destructive. As a child, you possessed an immature body and mind, and therefore quite naturally an immature emotional structure. Most of you gave your body and mind a chance to grow out of the immaturity to reach a certain physical and mental maturity. Let me give you an example. On the physical level, an infant will feel the strong urge to use its vocal cords. It has an instinct with the function of promoting the growth of certain organic matter through strong use of the vocal cords. It is not pleasant to hear a baby screaming, but this period of transition leads to strong, healthy organs in this particular respect. For the baby, not going through this unpleasant time by suppressing this instinctual urge to scream would eventually damage and weaken the respective organs. The urge to indulge in strong physical exercise has the same function. All this is part of the growing process. To stop the growing process with the excuse that there is danger in overexertion would be foolish and damaging. And yet this is done with your emotional self. You stop its functioning because you consider the growing transitional period so dangerous that you proceed to stop growth altogether. You not only hinder excesses as a result of this reasoning, but you also hinder all the transitory functioning that alone can lead to constructive mature emotions. We can't, figure them out with our head and arrive there. We have to go through experiencing and expressing. And the learning is organic and cellular and embodied. So
Even
that means,
like,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, Lynn. I was just gonna add, yeah, even the muscle growth comes with micro fractures, like micro tears in the muscles for them to
Yeah,
feel it's like on a physical level, physiologically. It's, the kind of break is part of the growth.
right. Exactly. And so, our duality says, pleasure is good, pain is bad. And then, we tend to run after the pleasure and try to avoid the pain. But you really can't. That's what he's saying. If you numb out, if you try to avoid the pain, you're cutting out your capacity to feel pleasure as well, because both are based on open flowing sensory energetic systems. And when we contract, when we control, when we bind, when we hold, then the flow of life force can't move through us. And the body can't really even function healthily. Over time, it will suffer and physical harm will result. But the first thing we're doing is, just trying to contain, these wild emotions that we don't know how to be with. So it's kind of like working in this sphere that, a lot of the path work we were exploring and, letting those immature feelings come out, for the first time, because as children, we weren't allowed to have them either, like they were too dangerous. And yet, if we can't express them and feel them, they remain held and trapped in the body and eventually, you know, create the physical dysfunction in that area of the body. So, when we're, mental processes mature, you have to go through a transition period as well. I mean, there were a lot of ideas we had as kids we look back on and realize maybe we're not, you know, so much in truth. So you not only learn, but you're also bound to make mistakes. And in your younger years, you often hold opinions which you later grow out of. While later you perceive that these opinions are not as right as they seemed to you during your youth, and see another side that earlier eluded you. It was nevertheless beneficial for you to go through those times of error. How could you appreciate truth if you had not gone through error? You can never gain truth by avoiding error. It strengthens your mental faculties, your logic, as well as your range and power of deduction. Without being allowed to make mistakes in your thinking or your opinions, your mental faculties could not grow. Strangely enough, there is much less resistance in human nature to the necessary growing pains of the physical and mental sides of the personality than to the growth of the emotional nature. Hardly anyone recognizes that emotional growing pains are necessary too, and that they are constructive and beneficial. Without consciously thinking about it in these terms, you believe that the emotional growth process should come about without growing pains. Most of the time, it is completely ignored that this area exists at all, let alone that it needs growth. Neither do you know how such growth is to be accomplished. You who are on this path ought to begin to understand this. If you do, your insistence on remaining deadened and dulled will finally give way, and you will no longer object to going through a period of growth now, allowing immature feelings to surface. In this growing period, immature emotions have to express themselves. Only as they are allowed expression for the purpose of understanding their significance will you finally reach a point when you no longer need such immature emotions. They kind of, through the movement, clear themselves in many ways. And if you can find a safe way, a safe space in which to express them, then you can certainly meet them and see them, and they're illuminated with the conscious awareness in that situation. And that in itself, gives you a new perspective and a new choice. So this will not happen through a process of will, an outer mental decision which represses what is still a part of your emotional being, but through an organic process of emotional growth, wherein feelings will naturally change their direction, their aim, their intensity, their nature. But this can only be done if you experience your emotions as they exist in you now. When you were hurt as a child, your reactions were anger, resentment, hate, sometimes to a very strong degree. If you prevent yourself now from consciously experiencing these emotions, you will not get rid of them. You will not enable healthy, mature emotions to follow in their place, but you will simply repress existing feelings. You will bury them and deceive yourself that you do not feel what you actually still feel. Since you dull your capacity to feel, you become unaware of what exists underneath. And then you superimpose feelings that you think you ought to have, but that you do not truly and really have. You all operate, some more, some less, with feelings that are not genuinely yours, with feelings you think you ought to have, but do not have. Underneath, something entirely different is taking place. Only in times of extreme crisis do these actual feelings reach the surface. And then you believe it is the crisis that has caused these reactions in you. No, the crisis reactivated the still immature emotions. It is the effect of the hidden emotional immaturity as well as of the existing self-deception. The fact that you put raw, destructive, immature emotions out of sight instead of growing out of them, and then deceive yourself believing you are a much more integrated and more mature person than you actually are, is not only a self-deception, but it also leads you more deeply into isolation, unhappiness, alienation from yourself, and unsuccessful, unrewarding patterns. So, if you can sort of understand, that the revelation here, is not to make us bad, but to help us understand so that we can, make a different, from a different place of awareness, make a different choice. And that first choice, is a difficult one. It's like the courage to go in and feel these feelings. We have to kind of unbury them, or we have to allow ourselves, in a triggering situation, to let them come up in hopefully a safe container, where we can, maybe step outside of the triggering situation itself, but come, and part of what we're trying to do is make that safe container within our own being. And we can learn how to do that over time so that we can actually do this work within our own, self with a kind of deep meditation process that, can allow us to bring these up and surface them and hold them ourselves. But until we're able to do that, we need kind of coaching, we need, support, and we need to test it. We need to risk in little ways to see if it really is safe. And we also need to, like touch into our feelings and maybe not go all the way, because what we feel is, like this great big reservoir of these feelings that we've stuffed for a long while. And we fear, like, if we were to, let that dam go, we would go crazy, or we would have these feelings forever, or we would, not be able to function in our life and in the way that we feel needing to. So we have to learn that our feelings are like ocean waves, like quantum packets, and that we can learn to surrender and trust our body to know how to digest feelings just like it knows how to digest food. And as we, little by little test it and trust it and practice, like letting a wave go through us, over maybe less intense things, that come up. Yeah, then eventually we will, be able to also work with these big, deep trauma places within inside of us that, we have these big triggers and these big reservoirs of feelings and, big places of grief. So part of it is sort of learning how to practice a little bit so we can stick our toe in and gradually go in a little deeper into the waters and help our calm our fears so that we're not just kind of pushing ourselves over a cliff and then when we do that we just dissociate, we don't feel the feelings anyway. So we have to go slow enough so we can gently and very specifically meet each of our feelings, and if we can't meet them with our presence and our open heart, then we also have to look at that. What is that about, and how can we, that's a feeling in itself, a feeling about the feeling, and so then we have to work with that feeling. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I actually do have a question because, well, it's not even a question. It's more just it's just a frustration that I can't help but when I read it, it does sound like it. It sounds like the guide, and I've read this a couple of years ago too, and it does sound like the guide is saying, "Well, you weren't brave enough, and you weren't brave enough to feel those feelings." It does sound kind of like you did it wrong and now you're going to suffer more in order to correct it. And it's just hard for me to, and I know, working with you that or and understanding that, and I can read through some of the lines where it says like the child doesn't have the capacity, but that is kind of where the path starts. And I just,
Exactly. I recognize, I too struggled a lot, in the beginning, hearing the voice of the guide as a critical parent, right? And then I finally began to realize, and at one time I think that one of the helpers was reading, and I don't know, he came across, with this loving tone. Maybe I'm not speaking it in enough loving, connection, but in my instance, it was kind of the first time that I recognized, oh, I'm hearing the voice of this material from my own inner parent and critic, and so and he is speaking, he's confronting in the sense of speaking truth, right? So but how do we receive truth with love? And even like what you're saying, when he says, that is a, you know we're avoiding, as we avoid these things, we're going to suffer more. It's like, I don't think he's saying that as a warning or as a judgment. I think it's kind of like it just is the fact. And
yeah,
and if we can hear this, basically as he's just kind of like it's like kind of separate out from our energy of sort of the parental voice and just kind of try to hear it as best we can as truth with love.
yeah, yeah. I try to, I mean, it's words. I'm not really, there's no sound. I'm just reading the words. But I think you actually are way more compassionate than when I read the actual PDF. But, I just try to remember that, like I, it doesn't matter. Like that's just another ego defense mechanism that I can get caught on. So it's almost like a double whammy joke that the words sound that way.
And in some ways, even I, when I read it, I can hear it and still get hooked a little, right? Still feel a little of that. But then, it's like I know at some level, that's not the truth, and a kind of like in a way that surfacing, just helps me, like hold that part of me that was sensitized, like we were so sensitized to this kind of critical voice. Our whole culture is third chakra dominant, with this, kind of, uh, judgment and criticism and evaluation. And, that's how we've been conditioned. And it's very painful. And so, it's sort of like just recognizing and having the compassion when I feel that come ups even still, right? Um, and what I'm doing in my own self is kind of retranslating, reminding myself, no, what does that really say, right? When I feel, a little bit of the uh, finger pointing, kind of energy. Um, and it's a bit of a work, but I think in some ways we can see it as like, again, if these feelings, it's another feeling that comes up in you, and if it didn't come up into consciousness and you weren't able to just be with it and experience it, right, it can't clear. So in a way, just even reading these lectures is kind of provoking some of these immature feelings in us into the light so that we can hold them in a different way, ideally. And if even if not, I think just the pure, like awareness, oh, here they are again, right? Is valuable. Like, our cells learn and they learn through repetition. So our third chakra, our mind, our pride, still thinks we should be getting this much faster, but it's something that's happening in a very organic way that is like embodied. It's not just the thought forms or the ideas, right? And we have been deeply programmed, and so it's sort of deeply reprogramming. And so if you could maybe recognize all of that that you shared, but like sort of just kind of gently question or challenge the frustration, you know, oh, here you are again, triggered voice, that feels this as self as judgment, and don't be frustrated that it's here again, that you're, hearing the voice of the guide through that, but sort of recognizing that it's probably not exactly, what the guide is meaning. And then maybe in that you can, you know, uh, either decide to just, ignore what the guide is saying, or feel like it doesn't work for you, because the guide is always saying just try it on for size, right? He says you don't have to believe anything he says. Um, and there's a lot of stuff in the lectures that I still don't relate to, so but where there is that, connection, then I think it really is partly the light in the lectures bringing to light for healing some of our still, conflicted reactions inside. Yeah. So we can welcome them instead of judge them and be frustrated with them. So, see, let me back up a little. Did I go? See, did I skip one here? So, so he says immature emotions earned you punishment as a child. Either they caused you actual pain or produced an undesired result when you expressed them. You lost something you wanted, such as the affection of certain people, or a desired goal became unattainable when you expressed what you really felt. This then became an additional reason for you to hinder self expression. Consequently, as you perceived such emotion to be undesirable, you proceeded to whisk them also out of your own sight. You found it necessary to do so because you did not want to be hurt. You did not wish to experience the pain of feeling unhappy. You also found it necessary to repress existing emotions because the expression of the negative produced an undesirable result. When we threw a tantrum, we usually got spanked, right? You might say that because the latter is true, your procedure is therefore valid, necessary, and self-preserving. You will rightly say that if you live out your negative emotions, the world will punish you in one form or another. Yes, my friends, this is true. Immature emotions are indeed destructive and will indeed bring you disadvantages. But your error lies in the conscious or unconscious thought that to be aware of what you feel and to give vent to it in action are one and the same. Now, as children, we couldn't discriminate and so we either acted it out or we suppressed it, or we suppressed it. You cannot discriminate between two courses. Neither can you discriminate between a constructive aim, for which it is necessary to express and talk about what you feel at the right place with the right people, and the destructiveness of heedlessly letting go of all control. A lot of times that destructiveness is our will backed emotion, our feelings. And it's like, in a sense, we're trying to, affect the reality. I don't like it this way. I want it to be different. I'm going to use my forcing current. I'm going to use my will to make you yield, to make life yield somehow. I'm going to, fight back. And so it's a very deep discernment, when do we stand up? When do we fight back? And then the way that we fight back, if we're standing in the truth and, using the truth, or if we're in this kind of defensive fighting back place where we're really, again, in the defenses instead of in this place of truth. So we're in that, the defenses are part of the immature emotional processes. So if you merely let go because you lack discipline or an aim and expose your negative emotions, that is indeed destructive. I mean, like for people that are emotion types like me, there's a certain pleasure in doing that. For other people, there's so much shame and pain. It's outweighs all of that. But there's a certain kind of negative pleasure that we can also have in these things. And sometimes the guide says, like if we couldn't get positive pleasure, we needed pleasure to live. And so we chose the negative pleasure route. We chose to be the one that like a lot of times in families, there was the scapegoat, right? And the scapegoat kind of was doing the acting out and taking on the discipline and the harshness of the abusive parent or whatever in that situation. And we have different roles and we have different capacities that are part of our higher self, and ways that we dealt with it as best we could coming in. So again, there's no judgment about that, but then to see now and to see if we can find a more mature way, or a way to work with our feelings to help them now. So try to distinguish between constructive and destructive aims. Try to realize the purpose of exposing your emotions, and then develop the courage and humility to allow yourself to be aware of what you really feel and to express it when it is meaningful. If you do this, you will see the tremendous difference between merely allowing immature and destructive emotions to come to the fore in order to relieve yourself of pressure and give them an outlet without aim or meaning, and the purposeful activity of re-experiencing all the feelings that once existed in you and that still exist in you. What has not been properly assimilated in emotional experience, but has instead been repressed, will constantly be reactivated by present situations. So that's, this is part of what, is important to see what's going on. And in a way, that, we can say, oh, so I'm bad because I'm doing that, but it's like a gift, it's a blessing. It may not be so pleasant again, but, by, having the present day situation reactivate those feelings, at least they don't stay buried. And like each time they're reactivated, it's another opportunity for us to work with them and integrate them. Now, each time we can deny them, we can, guilt trip ourselves back into suppressing them and judging them and trying harder next time not to let them out, but it probably won't work that way. It's like we have to sort of love and embrace all of these parts, and we can't transform them, through the constriction of the willpower and, somehow controlling things. But we can choose, to be a space in which to hold and feel what's happening within us, and to kind of befriend ourselves and ally with ourselves as we do that, because it's not easy to hold all of those feelings. And by holding now, I'm not meaning like in the defensive way of holding back and in and out, but holding in the embracing way, in the way of creating, a container and a presencing for all of those feelings. So these repressed emotions, that are constantly reactivated, they remind you in one way or another of the original solution that brought on such unassimilated experience in the first place. Such a reminder may not be factful. It can be an emotional climate, a symbolic association that lodges exclusively in the subconscious. As you learn to become aware of what is really going on in you, you will also notice such reminders. With this may come the realization that you often actually feel very much the opposite of what you force yourself to feel. How to activate the growth process. As the first few tentative steps are taken in the direction of becoming aware of what you feel and expressing it in a direct way without finding reasons and excuses, you will gain an understanding about yourself such as you never had before. You will feel the growing process at work because you are actively engaged in it with your innermost self, not merely with outer gestures. You will not only come to understand what brought on many unwelcome results, but how it is in your power to change them. Understanding the interaction between yourself and others will show you how your unconscious distorted patterns has affected others in exactly the opposite way to which you originally wanted. This will give you an inner understanding about the process of communication. This is the only way emotions can mature, by going through the period that was missed in childhood and adolescence. The emotions will finally mature, and you will no longer need to fear the power of those emotions that you cannot control by merely putting them out of awareness. You will be able to trust them and to be guided by them, for that is the final aim of the mature and well-functioning person. I might say that this has happened to all of you to some degree. There are times when you allow yourself to be guided by your power of intuition, but it happens more as an exception than as a rule. It cannot happen as a rule as long as your emotions remain destructive and childish. They are unreliable in this state. Since you discourage their growth, you live by your mental faculties only. They are secondary in efficiency. When healthy emotions make your intuition reliable, there will be a mutual harmony between the mental and emotional faculties. One will not contradict the other. As long as you cannot rely on your intuitive processes, you must be insecure and lacking in self-confidence. You try to make up for this by relying on others or on faults, religions, beliefs, right? This makes you weak and helpless. But if you have mature, strong emotions, you will trust yourself and therein find a security you never dreamed existed. After the first painful release of negative emotions, you will find a certain relief in the realization that poisonous matter has left your system in a manner that was not destructive for you or for others. After thus having gained insight and understanding, new, warm, good emotions will come out of you that could not express themselves as long as the negative emotions were held in check. It's like, we sit on top of the negative emotions and they're sitting on top of our good feelings. And so we can never feel that life force and the goodness of life. You will also learn to discriminate between genuine good feelings and the false good feelings that you superimpose out of the need to maintain your idealized self-image. This is the way I should be. Because you cling to this idealized self-image, you cannot find your real self and do not have the courage to accept that a comparably large area of your personality is still childish, incomplete, and imperfect. So if we can humbly sort of be, in our imperfection. Like sometimes what it felt to me like when I kind of was able to balance this was, I'm standing on 2 feet, I'm a child of God and I'm a complete mess. It's like I'm ADHD, I'm like, constantly overreacting, constantly, in my defenses, but it's like have childish emotions all the time, and yet I don't feel blamed or shamed for that. And I feel like, yeah, that's what my life is about. I came bringing these childish emotions in, and who I am, is the light being in me that is doing my best and trying to navigate this and trying to transform and trying to help and heal. And, so I can, I don't expect that I should not have childish, incomplete, and imperfect parts of me. In fact, with basically the soul journey, the pathwork is saying, we brought in like 50% of us is that, and then 50% of us is our higher nature, our, our light and our wisdom. And so, it's with that light and wisdom that we come here to this earth plane to work through and work with and heal and help these other places. And so, again, it's, we can, not feel like we should be any way other than how we are at any given time. It's exactly how we should be. So what is true security? To acknowledge this is the first necessary step to destroy your destructive processes and to build a real solid self that will stand on firm ground. For only in the mature emotions and the courage to make this maturity and growth possible will you gain the security within yourself you so ardently hunt for elsewhere. We try to be secure by becoming our mask, and that is the main path to most insecurity because, we think we have to be this way and it's the bar is so high, we're always going to fall short of it and feel like we failed, right? And so we are in this vicious circle of insecurity in that space. So build your true security. You have nothing to fear from becoming aware of what is already in you. Looking away from what is does not cause it to cease to exist. Therefore, it is wise on your part to want to look at, to face, and to acknowledge what is in you. No more and no less. To believe that it harms you more to know what you feel and are than not to know is extremely foolish. Yet to some degree, that is exactly what you all do. So I think, like where he's pointing out this extremely foolish thing, that might be a little bit of Eva's Germanic energies in that. Because I would not, I think, yeah, I mean, it's foolish. I don't know how you make that into an observation. That's just a fact. I think that maybe it could be, but, it comes with, I think, a little bit of her own and I feel that in some ways like a lot of the personalities of the mediums come through in these channelings and in some instances and she was actually a very, sensuous and spontaneous being, but I think that there's a little bit of the Germanic influence in some of this. So to some degree, we're all extremely foolish, right? And that can be okay because we're all just children. We don't know what we're doing. Nobody gave us an instruction booklet. We came here and we're trying to figure it out, trying to find our way. And to that degree, we're all in this together. And that is the nature of the resistance, accepting and facing ourself is where our biggest barrier is. Only after you face what is in you will your much more mature intellect be able to make the decision as to whether these inner behavior patterns are worth keeping or not. And what I've always found is that, like when I go into them, clearly I see that there was like a positive aspect or a design or an intention in it, but then it didn't quite work out that way, or there's some negative piece. And so there's kind of both. It's like everything has both divinity and distortion. So it's not like chuck the whole thing, or accept the whole thing, but like refine it, right? And discern and sort out from everything, both the divinity and the distortion in it. And so when we can do that, then we're, like really, sort of integrating on an even deeper level. So you're not forced to give up what seems a protection to you, but look at it with the clear and lucid eyes of truth. That is all I ask you to do. You have nothing to fear from it. And now, my friends, let us consider this subject in the light of spirituality. You all have come originally with the idea of growing spiritually. I might say that more or less all of you hope to accomplish this without tending to your emotional growth. You want to believe that one is possible without the other. Needless to say, this is not possible. Sooner or later, all of you will reach the point where you have to make up your mind as to whether you really want emotional growth or you want to cling to the childish hope that spiritual growth is possible while you neglect the world of feeling and allow it to lie dormant without giving it the opportunity to grow. So, this also reminds me, like these lectures, this was probably in the 60s at the latest, on this lecture. It's not a very old lecture. So, and back in those days as well, people were a lot more in their masks and a lot more in their avoidance of feelings even than we are now. And believe me, even now, it's not easy. It's not easy to feel our feelings. It's a real challenge. So, when he says courage and we have the courage or we don't have the courage, I mean, it takes that, and it takes, our gradual, working with ourselves to develop that capacity within us. So if feelings are stunted, then love cannot grow. You all know, regardless of what religion or spiritual philosophy or teaching you follow, that love is the first and the greatest power. In the last analysis, it is the only power. Most of you have used this maxim many times, but I wonder, my friends, if you ever knew that you were using empty words, always veering away from feeling, reacting, and experiencing. And again, a lot of people in the love mass believe that they're great lovers, and they're doing all of this wonderful service and stuff like that. And they're all, not in their reality at all. So, we have to realize that he's probably talking here, about, people that are kind of deeply invested and identified with their, wonderful, loving love mask, right? And so those people don't realize that that's not what real love is. But most of us here know and know the difference, right? And so what we want to do is really begin to cultivate and understand this other thing. But, love is a spontaneous soul movement, and we can't use our will and make ourselves, love, right? So he says, now, how can you love if you do not let yourself feel? So the first step is, loving is going to come. It's one of those feelings that's sort of buried, underneath maybe some other feelings, and we need to set it free and allow these other feelings to flow to get there. How can you love and at the same time remain what you choose to call detached? That means remaining personally uninvolved, not risking pain, disappointment, personal involvement. Can you love in such a comfortable way? If you numb your faculty of feeling, how can you truly experience love? Is love an intellectual process? Is love a lukewarm matter of laws, words, letters, regulations, and rules? Or is love a feeling that comes from deep within the soul, a warmth of flowing impact that cannot leave you indifferent and untouched? Is it not foremost a feeling, and only after the feeling is fully experienced and expressed will wisdom and perhaps even intellectual insight as a byproduct result from it? How can you hope to gain spirituality and spirituality and love are one by neglecting your emotional processes? Think about this, my friends. Begin to see how you all sit back hoping for, and this is part of, like where also spiritual was sort of more like this meditation, right? And sort of avoiding, like sort of being calm, being centered and all of that, I think is also a part of what, he's pointing to here. Because a lot of the early days, the understanding of a spiritual path, if it wasn't a religion and you were not following your religious beliefs, you were following a spiritual path, but in that you were following certain rules and you were meditating, you were trying to follow right livelihood and all of that, but you were basically meditating. And this is a little different than what the guide is bringing forth here, and especially at that time, it was pretty radically different to open to this world of feelings. After you see this clearly, you will comprehend the preposterousness of this attitude that wants to stay separate from our feelings, to develop spiritually. Your conscious or unconscious rationalization is still denying the awareness and expression of your emotions, even though they are at the moment still destructive to quite a degree. They will take on a different light in your own eyes. You will look upon your resistance to doing what is so necessary with a little more understanding and truth. Any spiritual development is a farce if you deny this part of your being, if you do not have the courage to allow the negative in you to reach your surface awareness. How can healthy, strong emotions fill your being? If you cannot deal with the negative because it is out of your awareness, this very same negative element will stand in the way of the positive. Those of you who now follow this path and do what is necessary will first experience a host of negative feelings. But after these are dealt with and properly understood, mature constructive feelings will evolve. You will feel warmth, compassion, and good involvement such as you never thought possible. You will no longer feel yourself isolated. You will begin to relate to others in truth and reality, not in falsehood and self-deception. When this happens, a new security and respect for yourself will become a part of you, and you will begin to trust and like yourself. Question: is a faith in God and love without emotional maturity possible? Answer: that is impossible. If we speak about real love, the willingness to be personally involved and not about the childish need to be loved and cherished that is so often confused with love. For real love and real genuine faith to exist, emotional maturity is a necessary basis. Love and faith and emotional immaturity are mutually exclusive. The ability to love is a direct outcome of emotional maturity and growth. True faith in God, in the sense of true religion as opposed to false religion, is again a matter of emotional maturity because true religion is self-dependent. does not cling to a father authority out of the need to be protected. False faith and false love always have the strong emotional connotation of need. True love and true faith come out of strength, self-reliance, self-responsibility. All these are attributes of emotional maturity, and only with strength and self-reliance and self-responsibility are true love, involvement, and faith possible. Anyone who ever attained spiritual growth, known or unknown in history, had to have emotional maturity. So let me breathe here and pause. I should have paused right before we went into that first question. Anybody have anything they want to come in with? So I think we're coming to a close here. There's maybe a couple more Q&As. So next question is, if someone doing this work finds wild emotions going back to childhood, how is it possible to handle them and substitute for them and let them disintegrate without the person who helps in this work right here? At the time, let us say twice a month, when we have the opportunities, talking about in sessions, right? When with a helper, when we have the opportunity to express those wild feelings with the helper present, we may not feel such emotions while we strongly feel them at other times. So he's saying, like out in the world, he's feeling them, but then he's coming to the helper session and then he can't access them. And he's asking, if one is on one's own, what is the right way to handle those emotions at the moment that they come up? So the guide answers, in the first place, it's significant if emotions only come out when one is not actively doing this work with the so-called helper. This itself points to a resistance and in the long drawn out result of the repression, right? You're hiding it from yourself and from the helper, and so due to such repression, the emotions that come out first will then appear at opportune moments and will be so strong as to confuse the person. But after a comparatively short time, with the inner will truly determined to face the self in its entirety, destructive emotions will not only appear at the proper time and in the proper place, but you will be able to handle them with a meaningful result. The state of resistance points to the fact that inward struggle and hate still exist along with the child's desire that manifest conflict should be resolved, while the basic defense mechanism is left untouched. In other words, we want to fix the situation, but hold on to the defense. If destructive emotions govern you instead of your being able to govern them without repression, it is a form of temper tantrum in which the psyche says, you see, you have forced me to do this, and now see where this leads to. If such subtle hidden emotions can be detected, it will alleviate any danger of negative emotions taking on a power that the personality cannot handle. In the second place, it is important that you do not feel guilty about the existence of such emotions, which are probably incompatible with the image you have of yourself. If you learn to accept the reality of yourself instead of your mistaken self-image, the strength of negative emotions will abate. Yes, you will, of course, experience negative emotions, but you will never fear that they can lead you into losing self-control. Let me put it this way. The strong impact of negative emotion to the point where you fear that you are unable to handle them is not due so much to their existence per se, but to the lack of acceptance on your part of the fact that you are not your idealized self. The negative emotions in themselves would be much less disturbing if you did not cling to the idealized self while struggling to give them up. Once you have accepted yourself as you now happen to be, and have made the inner decision to part with the illusion of yourself, you will feel much more at ease. You will become capable of experiencing negative emotions in the way that promote growth. You will derive insight from them, even if you are alone at the moment. Moreover, emotions will come up during working sessions and will yield even greater insight if they are expressed and worked with. So I cannot give you rules to observe. I can only point to the reason behind this manifestation. If you truly absorb it, wish to understand it, and go on from there, this will help you a great deal. Question. That means that the emotions as such are not dangerous, but it is our disappointment in ourself that makes them so powerful or dangerous. Yes, that is right, but they need not be dangerous if you do not want them to be. If inner anger is not properly understood and released in a constructive way, such as you learn on this path, a so-called temper tantrum takes place and the child in you lashes out, destroying others and the self. Find the child who wants to strike out, and you will be in control of evolving negative emotions without repressing them, but expressing them constructively and learning from them. Really, that's so important that these are there. They have important truths that we need to retrieve from them. So find the area in which you resent not being taken care of, not being given all you want. Once you are aware of the reason for all this anger, you will be able to humor yourself because you will see the demands of the child and how they are, not appropriate. Again, the word preposterous is one that seems a little judgy, but, this is the work you have to do in this particular phase. It is a crucial and decisive milestone on your road. When you get over this particular hump, the work will proceed much more easily. Whenever you are afraid of losing control, I advise you to think of the image you have of yourself, of what you think you should be, as opposed to the feelings that are actually coming to the fore. The moment you see this discrepancy, you will no longer feel threatened by the negative emotions. You will be able to meet and handle them. This is the best advice for you in this respect. See, when we go to our ISI, we can't meet those feelings. We have to reject them. We have to deny them. We have to, judge ourselves, make ourselves wrong for them, right? And so then we can't work with them. We can't handle them. So this is the best advice for you in this respect. Find in yourself where you are angry at the world for not allowing you to be your idealized self-image, where you feel it prevents you from being what you could be without its interference. Once you are aware of such emotional reactions, you will again come a great step forward. You see, my friends, your misunderstanding is that you think the harm comes from the existence of the negative emotions as such. It does not. It comes from your non-acceptance of your real self, from the blame you throw onto the world for not allowing you to be what you feel you could be if the world would let you. This is the nature of such strong, powerful emotions, and they can endanger you only as long as you are unaware of their nature. Therefore, seek their meaning, seek their true message, and you will never have to fear. With this, my dearest, dearest friends, I go from you. Blessings for each one of you. May you all gain further strength, further wisdom to conduct your life and your inner growth so that you do not stand still. For this is the only thing that gives meaning to life, your continuous growth. The better you accomplish this, the more you will be at peace within yourself. Blessings with all strength, love, and warmth are given unto you. Be blessed, be in peace, be in God. Okay, let me see if I can find the stop share. Okay, so how did we do? Any final closing comments or thoughts on that lecture?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, it does hurt to hear that, but not you, but it does hurt to read it. But at the same point, it's like, man, if I could do what it said, that'd be, great. If I could just find the truth in what that negative emotion, but it, there's also like I'm one of the people that feel shame. So just
You're breaking
trying
up
to
by that last verse again. I didn't hear you.
like I'm just one of those people that feel shame. Like emotion always comes with shame. So, but if I could do it, like,
So let's that's a feeling, right? And again, it's a very painful feeling, so it's difficult to tolerate and be with it, and it's really ultimately a feeling that doesn't have. It's very painful because it's not the truth, right? And yet if we can sort of sit with that, that's the truth that we can bring out of that shame, and that can set us free, right? And so part of it is, again, just learning to kind of breathe and tolerate. And, when we feel shame, we have a story and a thought form with it, but it's also an energy expression in the body. And it's really that we're most uncomfortable with. I mean, the story activates it and sends it intensifying inside of us, but it's the energy and the feeling in the sensory that is, what we can kind of learn to um, be present to, right? And tolerate, breathe and tolerate, almost like labor pains, or if you stubbed your toe, you're holding it and you're there with it, trying to breathe and, like release some of the, hurt in it. And so that's what we want to try to do with these inner feelings is, just feel those sensations and breathe and practice tolerating. And as we can do that, we can end up penetrating and accepting and being more with them. And then from there, they can reveal their piece of truth or the thing that we need to see in them. So great. Hey, Veronique, how did you do? Are you still with us? I'm not sure. I guess maybe not. So um, I just met Veronique this weekend from the Stafford area, the Fredericksburg area. There she is. Hey.
I'm here. I was just having a late dinner, and so I didn't want anyone to be watching me eat my soup. But I'm listening to everything, and excuse me. It's like, the conversation we had yesterday, Darlene. It's like almost the continuation of that. That's what it feels like for me.
Uh-huh.
So I really appreciate being able to be here because it's definitely hitting home for me in a lot of ways.
Great. Very good. Yeah. And, these lectures are available free online. And I, have some recordings of this that I put on my YouTube channel and stuff like that. But it's kind of every other Wednesday that we do this exploration. So hopefully maybe you can squeeze some time and join us again in the future. We're, reading through this book. Not sure. Let's see if I can see what the next lecture is. So the next one we're reading is called Real and False Needs. And that's another really, good lecture. So hope to see everybody there.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Is this a book I can get to look at?
Yes, and these lectures are also, like I think I sent a link to the PDF. I may not have sent it to you, however, so I can do that. You can go on Amazon and get this book. It's called The Pathwork of Self-Transformation, and it's an ebook. That's what I'm using here. But these lectures are kind of edited into a book format from their original format, and all of those are available online for free at pathwork.org. And so you can, I think this is lecture 89, and then you can, you can look up Pathwork Real and False Needs, and it'll pop up, where to find that lecture online. So, or you can get the book.
Yeah, if you don't mind sending those things to me in an email so I can find them later because I might have a hard time remembering all that.
Will do.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Darlene.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.